The world around us moves in a sequence of events that we experience through time. The way humans perceive and interpret time is unique to the individual. While some moments feel like slow motion, others speed by in an instant. How we perceive time depends on setting and emotion that are present. Scott McCloud defines comics as juxtaposed pictorial and other images in deliberate sequence, intended to convey information and or produce an aesthetic response in the viewer. Authors use a deliberate sequence and the response of viewers to create a perceived timeline that enhances elements of the story the author is producing. Time is an effective tool that can be used in comics to enhance emotion, plotline, mood, and tone. Unlike real time, time in comics can be changed, stretched, or shortened. There are no rules defining time, and it is relative to the author creating it and the readers reading it. In the comic Time Masters by Bob Wayne and Louis Shiner, the authors manipulate time to produce a plot that is interesting, complex, and emotionally thrilling. Wayne and Shiner use techniques that, although are different, all produce manipulations in time. These techniques are text, labeling, lines, and the use of multiple panels. The most concrete way to describe time is through text and labeling. With this technique, the author could write dates on the comics. They could have a transition slide describing the amount of time that is passed, or it could be brought up in dialogue. Authors use this when they need to be specific. In Time Masters, Wayne and Shiner introduced the comic by labeling the first slide 1990. Since the comic was written in 1990, it is geared towards a 1990 audience. By stating just 4 numbers, the audience now knows much more about the setting of the comic, and they can probably infer that the setting of the comic is similar to their own world. In contrast, Wayne and Shiner later set the scene in the 25th century. From this fact, the audience perceives an entirely new setting that requires different impressions. The audience is likely to invoke their preconceived notions about the future, which could be a technologically advanced society or whatever they have believed in the past. While in certain situations it may not invoke any preconceived notions, it can produce an intense emotional response in the audience member. Labels can be used to produce any emotion out of the audience. And an excellent example of this is the dramatic effect that can be used to create urgency and suspense in a comic. Shiner and Wayne use this at the very end of Time Masters. The scene depicts a large dinosaur chasing a character. This is an intense and adrenaline-producing scene. This is because of the uncertainty that is present. When the time label "Continue Next Month" appears, it creates even more uncertainty about the fate of the character while they are stuck in that scene for a month. Lines are another technique that are used to manipulate the audience's sense of time. Lines are used to display the pacing of the scene. In very specific scenes, the author may want to show that the scene is moving rapidly, or in slow motion. The lines may be attached or coming off of a certain object or person. Shiner and Wayne show this when the main character opens a double door aggressively. The lines coming from the door show that the door was opened with a lot of force and is moving quickly. This reinforces the message in this panel that the character is angry. While lines attached to the object show that the object is moving quickly with respect to time and the scene, lines in the background can show that the scene is moving faster or slower with respect to time. For example, in a scene from Time Masters where a pocket watch is sent through a time machine, it can be inferred that this happens within an instant. The lines, however, make the scene seem like it happens over several seconds. The lines in these panels show a slow motion effect, and this creates suspense. In movies, the frame rates match something similar to what we perceive in real life. But since comics are limited to a set amount of slides, usually in the 20s per issue, the author must pick and choose what to emphasize, and by doing so, speeds up or slows down time. This 3-panel scene from Time Master shows the aftermath of a massive bomb that killed many people. The last two panels show the same exact scene, but with a few minor differences. The character in the front has his head cocked slightly, and the man in the background lights a cigarette. When a scene is sprawled out over 2 or more panels, time appears to slow down, and the audience is able to pick up on the tiniest details. The actions depicted in this scene, for example, like the cigarette, would not normally be noticeable. The effect of this is enormous to the mood of the story. With the subtle cigarette added between scenes, it is clear that the character approaching in the background is troubled by this event. Spanning multiple scenes and creating little changes allows authors to use more specific techniques to show large changes in the storyline. Another case of this is the pocket watch through the time machine example from earlier. This again is a very fast-paced scene that is drawn out over, this time, 4 slides. Upon careful inspection of the scene, details of the pocket watch slowly disappear with each slide. In this case, Wayne and Shiner again bring tiny details into focus. Time allows for emotions, scenes, and situations that are not normally present to be expressed in as many ways as possible. Time is essential to the plot of all stories, but when manipulated like in comics, can result in interesting effects. The techniques used allow the author to bend time. This ability allows for infinite timelines, infinite plots, and very interesting comics. It allows for stories that are unique in every single way. Whether the author wants to be clear, vague, emphasize pacing, or draw attention to certain details, it's all possible in comics.